Mickey Jordan had always been fascinated by the Wendigo. His grandfather, a famous cryptologist, told him stories about the creature. He described it as a tall, thin beast with glowing eyes and sharp bones pressing against its pale skin. The stories always ended the same way. Whoever saw it never survived. When his grandfather passed away a month ago, Mickey inherited all his research. Over 5,000 pages filled with notes, maps, and theories. Among them was a map pointing to a snowy region in Alaska. His grandfather believed the Wendigo was real, and this place was the key to finding it. Determined to uncover the truth, Mickey packed his gear and set off. For 3 months, he camped in the deep forests of Alaska. The days were harsh, and the nights were worse. The cold bit at his skin, and the silence of the wild was unsettling. His only company was his camera and the pages of his grandfather's notes. The deeper he traveled, the more isolated he became. Yet he pushed forward, determined to prove that his grandfather's research wasn't just a collection of myths. One night, everything changed. Mickey was asleep in his tent when a strange noise woke him. It wasn't the wind or an animal. It was something else. A low, unnatural sound echoed in the darkness. His heart pounded as he grabbed his camera and flashlight. Slowly, he unzipped the tent and stepped outside. The snow-covered trees stood still. The night air was freezing, but he felt something odd. A faint warmth, almost like a breath against his skin. Then he saw it. A cave. Hidden among the rocks, its entrance was wide and dark. The air around it was different. It was warm, too warm for such a cold place. His instincts told him to turn back, but curiosity pushed him forward. Mickey hesitated before stepping inside. The cave walls were rough, and the deeper he went, the warmer it became. It felt unnatural, as if something was living there. His flashlight flickered across the walls, revealing scratches, strange symbols, and deep marks. His breath came in slow, uneasy gasps. As he moved further in, he noticed strange objects on the ground, bones, some old, some fresh, scattered across the floor. His stomach twisted. Then a deep growl echoed through the cave. A slow, heavy sound vibrating through the air. His blood ran cold. Panic surged through him. He turned and ran toward the exit. His boots pounded against the stone floor. The growl grew louder behind him. He could feel something moving, something big. He reached the entrance and gasped, but the door was closed. A solid rock wall now blocked the way out. Mickey's heart pounded in his chest. He pushed against the stone door, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. His breath came in quick gasps. Turning back, he searched for another way out. The growl echoed again, closer this time. He hurried through different tunnels, his flashlight flickering in the darkness. His mind screamed at him to move faster. His boots pounded against the ground as he ran, heart racing. The air felt thick, and every shadow seemed to move. He didn't know what was behind him, but he knew it was getting closer. Then he stopped. A figure stood in front of him, an old man wearing a scientist's coat. His expression was calm, his posture steady. "Follow me," the man said calmly. Mickey hesitated, unsure if he should trust him. But there was no other choice. He obeyed. The man turned and walked through a narrow passage. Mickey followed, glancing back once more. The growls had faded, but he still felt uneasy. Something wasn't right. At the end of the passage, a metal door waited. The man punched in a code, and the door slid open with a deep hum. They stepped inside. The door sealed behind them with a heavy clang. Mickey jumped at the sound. The room was dimly lit. Rusted equipment, broken monitors, and thick cables lined the walls. Dust covered the surfaces. The air was thick and stale. It smelled like metal and decay. The old man turned to him. "You need to know the truth about this place," he said. His voice was steady but serious. "I was a friend of your grandfather." Mickey's breath caught. "You knew him?" The man nodded. He was closer to the truth than anyone. That's why I brought you here." Mickey's hands clenched into fists. His mind filled with questions, but he couldn't find the words. His grandfather had always talked about the Wendigo, but no one had ever believed him. Could this man prove it was real? The old man motioned for Mickey to follow. They moved deeper into the underground facility. The corridors stretched far, filled with abandoned machinery and faded documents. Some doors were broken, others locked. The place had been active once, but now it was silent. Too silent. Mickey glanced at the old papers scattered on a table. Some had drawings of strange creatures. Others showed notes with dates and warnings. He wanted to stop and read them, but the old man kept walking. Then they stopped in front of a thick metal door. It looked stronger than the others, reinforced with heavy locks. The old man entered a code. The locks clicked open. The door groaned as it slid back. Inside, something moved. The room was dark, cold. The air smelled of decay. Chains rattled. Mickey's flashlight flickered over a towering figure. His stomach twisted at the sight. The creature was thin, almost skeletal, with glowing eyes and sharp bones pressing against its pale skin. It was chained to the walls, its breath slow and heavy. The scientist stepped closer. "We contained it after years of failed attempts," he whispered. "Your grandfather helped design the traps." Mickey's grip tightened on his camera. He had proof, real proof. He raised the lens, his hands shaking, ready to record. This was what he had been searching for. He had spent months in the cold, following clues, and now he had the evidence in front of him. Then, a sharp sound broke the silence. Snap! One of the chains had broken. Mickey's breath caught in his throat. The Wendigo's head jerked toward them. Its glowing eyes locked onto Mickey. It let out a low, guttural growl that sent chills down his spine. Another chain snapped, then another. The scientist's face turned pale. "Run!" he shouted. The creature lunged forward, its claws slashing through the air. The metal walls trembled as it let out a piercing screech. Mickey barely dodged as the Wendigo broke free completely. The scientist reached for a control panel, but before he could press a button, the Wendigo struck. Its claws tore through the air, hitting the old man with brutal force. He crashed into the wall, blood splattering across the floor. Mickey froze, his mind filled with horror. He wanted to help, but fear kept him still. Then instinct took over. He turned and ran. The creature let out another screech and followed. Mickey ran as fast as he could. The tunnels twisted and turned, but he barely noticed. He could hear the Wendigo's heavy steps behind him. The growls were getting louder. The air felt thick, making it harder to breathe. His legs burned, but he kept going. He saw a door ahead. He lunged for it, slamming into the metal. It didn't open. His hands shook as he searched for a way out. Behind him, the Wendigo was close. He could feel its breath against his skin. He pressed against the door, heart racing. Then his fingers found a panel beside it. He hit a button. The door slid open just in time. Mickey stumbled inside. The door slammed shut behind him. He could hear the Wendigo scratching at the metal, its growls vibrating through the walls. His breathing was ragged. His hands trembled. He had survived. For now. Looking around, he realized he was in another section of the facility. More documents, old equipment, and his heart stopped. More cages. Empty ones. This wasn't just a research lab. It was a prison. And the Wendigo wasn't the only one. Somewhere in the darkness, another growl echoed.